All right, it's Lee Howard again. We're doing number 3 on the book, chapter 13. Another area of media studies that garners a lot of attention is about depictions of violence in the media. Some have argued that TV violence in movies desensitizes people to acts of aggression in real life. It should be noted, however, that the courts have never really accepted this argument. It's sort of an idea that you can transfer responsibility by blaming the media. Media depictions, according to the courts anyway, don't lead to real life violence in any sort of legal defense. What's more, some argue that depiction of violence in the media could actually reduce acts of violence in real life. The idea is that the cathartic thrill of seeing a 300-pound lineman tackle someone in football might actually reduce violence in real life because people will feel satiated from that feeling of needing some sort of aggression in their life. So that's one theory. So this is called the cathartic effect theory, and basically it was proposed by Seymour Feshbach, and it's gained actual credence in recent years despite some skeptics. It's possible as well that showing the effects of violence can actually have long-term effects that are good for society. For instance, NBC several years back aired a very controversial movie called The Burning Bed, based on a real-life story that looked at the issue of spousal abuse. The show gave women the courage to leave abusive relationships, according to some. But most of the evidence points to violence depicted in media as having a potential act as a cue for real-life violence. Aggressive stimulation theory, however, often really overstates this case. This idea that there's a causal link between what's on TV and real-life violence. Aggressive stimulation theory, however, often, again, overstates the same case of the causal link. So instead, it could be argued that the catalytic theory of media violence, that people generally look at the world as a place where violence pays dividends and are attracted to violence in movies. Under this theory, the media have a role in real-life violence but do not actually trigger it. And the media have a role in violent behavior only if other influences are present, such as whether a violence is rewarded. So the key is that if you don't reward the violence, it's probably not going to happen again. So that's a key to the whole idea that the media have some responsibility for violence. So the chance for media-cued violence increases if the aggression portrayed is realistic and exciting, if it succeeds in righting a wrong, and if people can relate to situations and characters. So you've probably seen a lot of the, kind of nasty good guys, get rid of the nasty bad guys, and that can be a real thrill because, you relate to wanting to get rid of the bad guys and right the wrongs. If you had to sum it up, you could say some people, given the right conditions and the right violent messages, could be unduly influenced by those messages. But you can never say that people are propelled to violence as a result of media violence. Violence based on media views are considered rare and not entirely predictable. An interesting sidelight of violence on TV is that it actually can be making us more paranoid in real life. While the average TV character has a 1 in 10 chance of actually being subject to violence on screen in a given week, the average person only has about a 1 in 100 chance of seeing any sort of violence in real life in any given year. So you can see there's a huge disparity between what people are perceiving on their TV and what's actually happening in real life. And some people think that's a problem because in a democratic society, this kind of violence on TV that is so much stronger and more persistent than what you're seeing in real life, could actually create a siege mentality among the public, despite the fact there's really no indication in their real life that anything is amiss. So there's sort of this question of how much of this violent issue is related to people just kind of getting paranoid about what could be going on out there based on what they're seeing on TV. And there's a concern that people are going to therefore be more likely to trade off their freedoms for more security, despite already being fairly secure in their life. It's also postulated that violence on TV, has desensitized people and made them more tolerant of antisocial behavior because they see so much of it on TV. I think, if anything, we're seeing some of that today in our political machinations that are going on. So, although this is just a theory, it certainly has been borne out lately. And of course, as with all these things, more study will be needed to, make that connection. And as people has become more numb to media violence, filmmakers, of course, have also upped the ante on violence to create even more graphic violence to capture audience's attention. So we have this, constantly upping the ante in Hollywood to, do something more astonishing than the last movie, and that's creating this sort of, one-upmanship in Hollywood to create the more violent movie that you can possibly create. Maybe there's going to be a stopping point for that. I imagine there would be, but we haven't seen it yet. So that's the basic summary of Chapter 13. I just want to remind you that you do have your chapter study journals due. You're going to have to be studying for the final, and I will be giving you an essay question for your final in advance. It'll deal with Chapter 17. So at this point, you really should be completely done with Chapters 13 and 14. And again, we're skipping Chapter 15 and 16. But if possible, by Monday, I hope you will have read through Chapter 17 because, that's going to be on your test, and it's also going to be a major part of the discussion next time. So anyway, thanks for bearing with me. Hope to see you next Monday. Take it easy. Bye.